Hey, it's Jason, and we're about to do some harmonic balancer stuff. So I'm a bad man, and I started taking stuff apart without videotaping. I'm still getting the hang of including everyone in this. So I've already broken off the fan itself. I got the shroud out of the way, and I just started getting a look at the water pump and harmonic balancer, which both are coming off today and getting replaced. So I'll walk you through the really simple stuff that I've already done. This is not going to be a full-on how-to, but I'll give you the Cliff's Notes. Looking at this, I think that honestly the harmonic balancer is going to be easier than the water pump. I'll get you in here to take a look, but it looks like where the water pump goes in, I have to actually take out the power steering pump, AC compressor bracket. There's a bunch of stuff in the way, I think, unfortunately. So while it's nice to have the creature comforts, more stuff to dismantle. So I'm going to get you in here, we'll take a look and let you see what I got. So like I said, I had already started dismantling. So the way this works is, here's your pulley that goes over the water pump. That goes on, covers the face of the water pump. This fan goes right on it and lines up with those holes. You can see it's got like slits in here. So you actually can take out two and loosen two and kind of shimmy the thing. What I ended up doing was I loosened them all, took three out, and then you can just kind of lift it right up over the last one and shimmy it out of the way. One little trick that I didn't do, made it a little bit harder for myself, was I thought, well, I don't want to have tension on this when I go to break it loose so it doesn't try and go shooting off anywhere crazy. So I pulled the belt off before I loosened all four screws. I wouldn't do that next time. Take all four out, at least crack them loose before you take the belt off, because then this thing just started free spinning. So I had to get in here with a pair of channel locks and just grab onto the shaft just to hold it still. Wasn't a big deal, these weren't super tight, but I would leave the belt on next time. Little tip two, the fan shroud just has tabs on the bottom. Tabs sat down, it was only bolted in on the top. So if you get these top two out, you can just wiggle it out, shimmy it out, remove it, just the upper two. There's your hardware there. So for the for these uppers that hold the shroud in, 5/16. For the four that hold the water pump, 7/16. I couldn't get the shroud out without taking the fan off, just because of the distance here, without removing the radiator, which I don't think I need to do for any of this. So what I did was I reached in on this side of the shroud, pulled the four bolts that hold the fan, unbolted the shroud, and then I pulled the shroud and the fan out straight up from the top, all as one unit. And the only thing you got to be careful of, there's this coolant line that runs through the throttle body that you have to kind of shimmy and work around, and the air intake. But you push that out of the way, everything came up pretty easy. And now I have full view of this water pump. But like I was saying, if you look in here, I'm pretty sure this pin goes through the water pump housing, and it's on the other side of this bracket that holds that's power steering and that's the AC compressor. So I don't think there's an easy way to get this thing out without pulling that bracket as well. So I'm going to double check that and verify, but then if that's the case, we're going to yank that out. I've already broken loose the coolant lines for the heater core here, but these hoses are a little bit old and stubborn, so I can't get them popped off. Plan is going to be pull the water pump out and disconnect them once it's loose from the block. Alright, so we do have to remove the AC and power steering pump bracket, that whole assembly, out of the way. Rather than separate them and pull them off individually, it looks like there's just 3 bolts holding it on. We're just going to pull the whole bracket loose, try and slide it out and just shove it out of the way for now. I may get something to kind of hang it from the hood. All I need to do is clear, it looks like this dowel pin, so I can get the water pump out. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to break all the other bolts loose first for the water pump, and then we'll come in at that guy last. So we're going to figure out what size we're looking for here. Looks like 5/8 is the magic size for all of them, it would appear. go ahead and start breaking these guys loose. I wish that bracket wasn't in the way. This would be a much, much quicker, simpler process, but I think even with that, it won't be so bad. These little bypass hoses, I imagine, will be a little bit of a chore. Putting it back together, I'm gonna have to try and line them up and get them on there while keeping that gasket through the back side. So that'll be fun. But we'll make it work. So we talked last time about me making my maps whenever I'm doing stuff. So look who's back. Made myself a fancy map of the water pump. I actually took the new water pump out of the box, laid it down, and traced the outline. And to orient myself, I put where the little inlet outlet is for the heater core and for the lower radiator hose, just to orient myself, because these bolts are not all the same length. So what I want to make sure I do is get them back in the same spots they were in when they came out. So I'm going to do this, and then you can just punch them in there, and I'll know exactly where each one goes without having to play the guessing game later. I have a feeling the lowers are going to be the worst, because they're going to be the most corroded, because this thing's been clearly leaking for a while. Upside is my hands aren't even that dirty since we cleaned this thing off last time. See, we're making progress. I had a little bit of a wild Friday night, so my beer of choice today is ginger ale. But that's all right. That's just that's being adult. Weird. All right, let's get this bad boy right here. I'm thinking it's time to break out Santa's little helper. Let's get a cheater bar here. Here's my breaker bar, Louisville Slugger edition. Get this thing into a position where I can get some good leverage on it. I haven't heard that satisfying crunch yet of the bolt breaking free. It's moving though, which means it might fight it the whole way out. Uh-oh. Great. Well, that's sheared clean off. So we got it loose. All right, so bolts on our bracket here on this driver's side are 9/16. Let's see some SAE usage on this. We're gonna break out the impact gun so we can snap that bit off immediately. Let's see if this helps. No dice. Ay caramba. Alright. We gotta level up.
What do you mean?
We're moving to the 1/2-inch breaker bar.
Also, we're doing cars.
For an ooga dooga time. Oh yeah! That's the noise I like to hear.
We're getting
Listen for it, it's refreshing. Hold on. Right? That one didn't do it. I didn't get the crispy crunch. But they're all loose. Now, we can get the lazy guy in here.
Dad, why do you have that on the ground?
Long boys.
My dad has this on the ground.
That's my fancy breaker bar.
Yeah, I don't think you need that
Alright, let's see how we can orient these so I remember which one's
Dad,
which.
since when did you go to Louisville?
I've never been to Louisville, but I like their bats.
Then how did you get it?
And it's actually Louisville. That's how they say it. Isn't that crazy?
It literally says Louisville.
I know. They've been pronouncing it wrong all these years. Nobody's corrected them.
Except me.
So it turns out you can skip all the fancy stuff. Just go straight to your 1/2-inch breaker bar. Save yourself the trouble. And then work backwards from there. Alright, so what I need to do is move this thing out of the way so I can fit, it's hard to see it, but there's a bolt back here I need to crack loose. I thought it was a dowel. It's not. It's actually a bolt holding the water pump in, but the bolt head, it's like a, I mean, it's like these. But these have threads on the other ends, like provisions. You could mount another bracket. This one was just a smooth rod on the front, and then a nut in the middle of it, and then threads in the back of it. So I got to get this up and out of the way enough to get a wrench on here and unscrew that bolt, which you can just barely see right now. So what I did was I've got my ratchet strap wedged up in here and then done to the hood. Now that we got this thing unbolted, we're going to see if we can just kind of hoist it up and out of the way. That seems to have it there. Oh yeah, we can get in there. Perfect. It's fighting pretty good coming out, which I don't love. I don't want to strip this one out because this one helps center this other bracket, but it is coming, just a little tight.
Dad, we're about to be on part 5 of my phone.
Oh man, she's just zooming. Like it, subscribe, I guess. Air impact would be great right now. I think I have, I'm just too lazy to go and dig it out. Bam! Now, she should just come right on loose. Alright, so I've got it separated all the way around. The problem is that bolt right there that broke off is keeping it from slipping all the way out, and I can't get it to pull through. I think that bolt's so corroded to the housing, it wants to come out with it. So I'm really fighting trying to get this thing out of here. I'm going to keep working it, see if I can kind of wiggle and shake and shimmy it, and I got the pry bar kind of in there. See if we can work it loose. All that's holding it is that, and then these little hoses for the heater core, and then we're home free. It's fighting me. Alright, so we finally got the old one out. I'd say that's bad. And even more lovely is the mess we got going on in here. Let's see if we can kind of get you in there. It is horrendous. Lots of buildup. You could tell it's been leaking for a long time. Everything's all corroded and gunky and just no. So we're going to take the wire brush to this thing, spray it down, clean it up. That stupid thing's going to the junk pile. I will say I've done a lot of water pumps. This was probably my least favorite, which is surprising. I thought it'd be a lot easier. I mean, 302, 504, they're everywhere. You'd think they'd have had that down by now, but apparently not. So anyway, she's out. It's gone. It's done. Let's clean it up and reassemble. Actually, kidding on the reassembly part, because we're going to keep that off to get to this pulley easier, which I do think is going to be the plan, because it looks way easier to get to that way. Oh, that clamps down in the abyss. That's nice. So I'm going with the threefold plan of attack for cleanup. Got my wire brush. I don't have a brass one, which normally I would like to use, but can't find it right now. I've got my metal brush though. I got a plastic one that I probably won't get much results with, but the handle's broken off so I can get into those tight to reach places. And then I figure too, this one will probably help, the little end on the cleaner for the battery terminals. That might come in handy for getting into these little holes where the bolt provisions are and everything, because all of that was totally funky nasty. And some of these were having a hard time threading in, so I'm going to run this through them a little bit and then spray all of those out. So we're not going to let the Bronco defeat us today. We've got to get a bunch of what's left of the old gasket material off where the water pump sits on the front of the block. And I've tried scrapers, I've tried some wire brushes. Beginner level stuff's not working. So we're gonna escalate the situation. And I'm gonna give this a try. So I don't use my Dremel a whole lot, so when the opportunity presents itself, I might as well. It's small enough I can get in there without a full-size drill. And I got this fancy new kit for Christmas. And it's got some tiny little metal wheels, little death wheels and stuff like that. So we're going to start, I think, with one of these cups and just see if that'll do her. If not, I think I like this brass guy right here. May give him a shot and see if we can just coax some of that junk out. And then while I'm at it, since I got this thing out and I do have some metal discs as well, we're gonna just and lop that bolt off that snapped the head on that left side of the water pump. I did clean it up pretty good in here. You can see it looks much improved, but you can see all this black is gasket material, and it's thick enough that it's not going to seat right if I leave it. I really hate to leave it. So I've got a big chunk from here to the side of the inlet, and then this whole inlet all the way around it has it all the way up almost to the top of the water pump. So only about half of it came off with the pump itself. And it is on there. I mean, I don't know if this was a factory original water pump, but as crusty as that stuff is, it makes me wonder. It does have the Ford casting on it right there. You can see that. So maybe so. Maybe she's original, which means she's got over 100,000 miles. I think this has got like 150,000 miles on it. So good run, I suppose. I just wish he'd have done it about 10 years ago. Then I wouldn't be doing it. But that's where we're at. Let's get to some dremeling. Can't you feel the adrenaline? Well, that's doing almost nothing. All right, we're gonna try going in caveman approach with this. Just a regular old razor blade, because nothing's phasing this stuff. It's amazing. NASA should really build something out of this. All right, so we got everything cleaned up with the razor blade. Went in after that, hit it with that brass wheel again. I went ahead and cut that stud off that was bent in there where the head is just totally broken off, and I cut it with a couple of those grinding wheels from the Dremel. Got it all cleaned up too. After I cut it off, I kind of cleaned it up a little bit. You can see the nub right there. I kind of rounded the edges off, cleaned it up. Everything is, there's still a little bit of gasket material, but everything is about flush now. And that's as good as it's going to get. I'm going to take my 9/16, that is the size we need to get these bolts off the crank here. Get you in so you can see it. But I don't know if this is going to have enough gusto. We're going to try it on one and just see what we get. Make sure it's seated good. Oh, action. That's one. Oh, you guys missed the Yahtzee, but we got her free. I just tapped around on it with the rubber mallet a little bit, and eventually she just gave it up. Now we can get a look at what's going on down here. You can see this thing is just, it's just had it. I mean, I could literally, if I wanted to, just probably pull that outer piece off by hand. It's so loose. But now we got to get the big boy. It's going to take some loving. Go ahead and lube them up. There's a big nut on the center of this crank we got to get off. I'm just going to fucking juice him up good. Let's give it a little, give it a little splish. Got her. I had to break out the air compressor and impact gun. My Harbor Freight one that says do not use above 100 psi. I turned it up to 125 psi and after about 30-45 seconds of just solid hitting on it, compressor kicked on. While the compressor was kicked on and almost at max pressure, she finally let loose, came sailing out. So we got the crank bolt out. That went pretty well actually. So now, in theory, this thing's disconnected. I just need I need to go get a puller so we can get the thing smushed off here. All right, well, we got ourselves cleaned up. Got a nice messy workspace, but we're gonna run down. We got everything ready to pull that pulley off except for the pulley remover itself. So we're gonna run down to my favorite spot, O'Reilly's, and pick one up. But I thought this would be a really cool time to do one of those fancy things I see all the time on the interwebs where you go in 3, 2, 1, bam. Got ourselves a harmonic balancer pulley kit. So let's see what we got.
Let's see what we got here.
Ta-da!
Woo, we got what we
So this
wanted.
guy, this little claw foot, is gonna line up over hopefully at least 2
It looks like a
of the
chicken
bolt
foot.
holes. It does look kind of like a chicken foot, I suppose.
Kinda, not really.
But so that's going to line up over 2 of the holes in the snout of the harmonic balancer, and I'll thread them in with one of these bolts that ends up fitting. And then this long guy here will end up going through the center and pressing into the center of the hub, which you can see if we get underneath here and wiggle.
I want to get under.
There you go. It's going to get pressed right in there. Screws on the outside into that spot on the inside where the nut was that holds it. And that should back this whole assembly off. And then the new one we can just put in there. There should be a keyway to keep it from only going in one way so we don't accidentally get our timing marks off or the weight off. It should go on, and then in theory we can just thread the center nut back on, or that center bolt, and just suck it in. So let's get to work on it. Figured I'd go ahead and snazz up the fan. Keep rebuilding everything else. You don't want to spray that part, because otherwise then it's aftermarket. Keep it all original, numbers matching. professional. Set this off to the side on top of the trash can to dry. We're gonna get a little creative here. So what I've got is 2 sockets, same length to keep everything symmetrical. 1/2-inch drive that'll fit like so. And that's going to help take up some gap here and bring this closer. Alright, so here's what we're looking at with the old one. You can see the rubber that kind of fills the space between is literally just, I mean, this thing was halfway pulled out just on one side. I mean, there's no question it was way off kilter. You can see where it's been rubbing and actually ground away some of the back of the balancer. You can see there's the snout, nice and clean. It came out, no mess, no fuss. You can see the keyway right there. And that's what's gonna guide in our new one and keep it in the right position. So we're just gonna stick the new one in, see if we can thread that bolt in and lock her down. Sounds great in theory. Here's the new one. You can see that face where that rubber gasket is flush on this one on both sides. So it just goes to show you how far off this thing was. I mean, you can see, I mean, half my thumb sticking on this one, and this doesn't have anything showing at all. So it was way, way, way off. Nice little piece. It's got the timing marks nice and clear and easy to read. Shows you your 180 off mark right there, so pretty cool. We're gonna slide it on, see what happens. Dorman, by the way, did this one. Actually, it looks pretty nice. 594-024 is the part number. Crawl underneath, new balancer, and just that center bolt in hand. So I can kind of feel keyway right here. Yeah, that seems to grab it right there. Is there enough threads to pull it in? I think so. I don't want to go crazy on it, get it misthreaded unevenly, but we are going to try and get the impact driver on it, just battery powered, to see if we can. Oh. So we're going to call that installed, I guess. Since the other one was so far off, it's hard to tell how far it's actually supposed to be. I guess I won't know perfect fitment and alignment until we go to bolt the pulley on the front. But seams all the way in. I mean, that's 125 pounds PSI on that compressor, so I'm thinking that's on there. So now, before I bolt the pulley and everything else up, while I've got it as open as possible, I want to go ahead and prep the water pump and get it bolted up. I've got the water pump with a new gasket, and I've got some RTV. I'm going to slather it up just because I only want to do this once. And then we'll drive them home. All right, we're getting ready to plop the water pump back on. I want to put some RTV on the mating surface. What I think I'm going to try, we'll give it a shot anyway. I think I want RTV on the face here, and then I'm going to try and stick the gasket onto the block first, and then put another thin layer of RTV on the water pump and see if I can do it that way. Okay, calling that good. Just gonna prop the water pump up on the top of the truck. We're gonna do the same thing here. I'm just gonna kind of just a little bead. So we're making some progress. I went ahead and bolted the pulley back up. Wanted to make sure everything lined up right. Oh, this is water pump back in. This was a total pain. One thing that I will put on my notes, and I'll leave a review even on the website for O'Reilly's. Love their parts. This is not their problem or their fault, but this barb that comes off that receives this end of the hose that goes up to the thermostat housing, so close to actually another part of the water pump, this base right here, I couldn't even fit the hose in between. You can see how unbelievably tight that is. What I ended up having to do is get a screwdriver, pull this hose back out, put a screwdriver in between here and hammer it through and bend this barb enough to clear the thickness of the hose to get it on. And then I had to actually take the hose clamp all the way off, push it through to this side and clamp it back on here. Total nightmare. Not ideal. Other than that, it was pretty self-explanatory. Everything bolted up, and when you look, line up all three of those pulleys in perfect alignment. Even the idler up there, everything looks good to go. So I know that that harmonic balancer is in and seated properly. So now at this point, I got everything except for the water pump put back together. So I'm going to put the water pump, pulley, and fan back on. Then we're going to go ahead and put the belt on. And, well, we got to do the, the shroud is going to be a kind of twofer at the same time. So that'll be a little tricky. Then in theory, it's all back together. Then I just got to top off the cooling system. So here we go. Well, yesterday, before I got everything buttoned up, my phone ran out of storage space and battery, but got it charged up, got some stuff deleted on, and here we are. Got everything put back together, the harmonic balancer pulley, harmonic balancer all reinstalled, water pump is in, everything's nice and dry, everything's been refilled, and we're good to go. So we're going to go ahead and fire it up. I'll show you how it runs now. Moment of truth. smooth. Smooth as a baby's rear end. Look at that, no shaking, no hesitation. Smooth idle. Everything's nice and lined up. Boom. So it turns out the shaking was not misfiring. It was just that harmonic balancer pulley. Got that installed. We're good to go, which means it's time to do some more stuff next time. We can get cracking on the interior, put some more money into this thing, because at this point, mechanically, it seems like it's pretty squared up, so it's worth throwing a little bit more at it. So I'll catch you next time when we do more stuff.